welcome to the Modernist Society podcast. I'm your host in Chicago, Eric Ottens.
I'm Jason Mojica in New York.
I can't imagine there's anyone listening to this who doesn't know who the Undertones are and aren't familiar with their music. If there is, stop listening, delete the episode, leave us a negative review on iTunes, and unsubscribe, and just go listen to the Undertones. They're just one of the best bands you could ever hear. They're one of my all-time absolute favorite bands. And this episode, we're going to bring you a chat with Michael Bradley from the band The Undertones. Not only was he the bass player, but he also wrote a really great book called Teenage Kicks, My Life as an Undertone, which is a really pleasant and charming and fun insight into that very specific era that they existed in their first run, 78 to 83, I think. And I have to say, there are extremely few bands that immediately, like within the first 10 to 30 seconds that I heard them, resonated this deeply with me, and that I immediately knew were going to be one of my all-time favorite bands. And I knew that the second I heard them, well over 20 years ago, and that's still true today. And if I feel a little silly trying to talk about why, because, you know, we talked to the guy from the band, so obviously what he is saying is much more important and valid than my ideas. But all of their songs, to me, or the reason I like them so much, is they're the style I like. He addresses this. They're fast, they're short, they're melodic, and they all have a solid idea behind them. There's something unique or interesting in each one. And I feel ridiculous as I say that, because anybody that likes any band would probably say that about them. But that's what I like about them. They are just great. I really am a huge fan, and you can hear that I am audibly nervous actually talking to our guests.
He's also the host of the Mickey Bradley Record Show on BBC Radio Ulster, so if you happen to be in Northern Ireland, you can check that out. Or alternatively, you can use a thing called the internet.
It's a fun show. I mean, he's older than us by a good deal. I'm 44, and I was just such a cranky old man that I was like, whatever, I can't hear it. And you sent me a link, and we're like, click this. And I did, and then I could hear the show. So it's extremely accessible. It can be done, yeah.
I mean, what was your first exposure to the Undertones?
So from reading Maximum Rock and Roll, I knew that they were a band that I wanted to hear. And, you know, I was in college. I was trying not to drop $20 on every CD that I wanted to listen to and would maybe like. This is my justification for pirating our guests' art. And so there was Mark Ruvalo, that I know that you know from No Empathy, some other bands, Johann's Face Records. And I would just bother him because he was a punk guy and very nice. And I was over at his place that he lived at with his label partner Gar. And I just asked, just because, you know, I just thought I could I thought if you liked punk, then we were in the same club and I could just do whatever I wanted and we're automatically friends. So I would just go there and be like, hey, I want to hear this band, so can I dub this from you? And then they said yes. We're very, very nice people. You know, I've had good experiences all around, kind of reaching out to people like that. So, yeah, I think during our chat with our guest, Mickey Undertone, I forgot that I should be embarrassed to explain to this man that the way I first heard his band was by pirating it, but I did. So yeah, true story. And I think that's...
But that sounds a lot like how they heard records and got introduced to bands, was kind of, you know, someone they knew had a record, and I think, you know, in his book, I don't think they returned the records that they borrowed. So
I think you're right. And it's a fine line. I mean, if you go to someone's house and play it and don't tape it, and never hear it again, I don't know if that's really better, but yeah. Technically, ethically, you're more in the clear if you do that.
Yeah.
And now let's tune into our chat with the very gracious Michael Bradley from The Undertones. Well, I'm going to dive in and just start kind of asking you some questions and picking your brain about your life and experiences, if that's okay with you.
Yes, fire away.
One thing I thought is just interesting about the Undertones. One, I'm very nervous. I apologize. I just have nerves. I can't help it. So
this is why Eric and I. This is how we work. We balance each other out in our like rabid enthusiasms.
You have the oxygen there, Jason.
60-40. 60. I'm also a big fan, but I don't actually own any of the rarities that Eric does. So I don't have any. I don't have cash on the line here.
That's the best.
Yeah, this is going to pay off big time.
That is definitely the best way.
I think if people, think about punk, a lot of their first associations will be kind of like the nastiness, the edginess, spitting, maybe some drugs. And the Undertones are just this very like pleasant experience. So I'm curious how you came to that at the time, kind of being able to observe what was happening and be a part of it, but definitely a kind of distinct version of it.
Yeah, we fail on the edginess and the spitting, so apologies for that. We came to it by the way I think a lot of people would have came to it at that time, listening to the radio and reading the NME, New Musical Express. That was a big thing for us. Where we were in Derry, there wasn't that much happening. There was music, but none of it, we didn't have the Ramones, put it like that. We didn't have any bands that you would go, wow, these bands are great. The people that played in groups, they were doing cover versions and they weren't that wonderful at all. So whenever I started hanging around with John O'Neill and Vincent O'Neill and Damien O'Neill and Billy Doherty, we had our own wee world, which was fed by reading the NME, which John got every week, by listening to John Peel, and also just by listening to records. I started going down there, when I say go down there, from my house in Craigan down to their house a couple of streets away. Mm-hmm. They had a good collection of records. They would have had, Beatles, they would have had some Doors, they would have had their own Stones. So we were listening to all that and just hanging around the O'Neill's house and just being kind of, 15, going on 16 years old. So we were doing that for a couple of years, and when we're doing that, we're developing our taste, and then by the time 76 came along, by the time the first Ramones LP, we just jumped into that fairly naturally. It just made complete and utter sense that songs should be fast and tuneful, hopefully with a bit of humor as well.
I couldn't agree more. And it took me it felt like a long time in my life to find that. Kind of growing up in the 80s, we had a lot of that very political, hardcore. You had to be kind of serious to be like a punk band. And when I finally got to the stuff, ironically, to me, I had to go further back to be like, oh, you could just be like, you could still be fast and loud, but be very just fun. It was a huge relief. And
it was the Ramones that did it,
Yeah. I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of know that the Ramones happened and the Sex Pistols happened. There was a bit of overlap, but they were definitely aware of each other. And the Sex Pistols, in my mind, kind of being maybe the snottier side of that. Would you say that the Ramones were kind of where you got some of the bubblegum? If that's not, I mean that as a compliment. If that's it, is that kind of where that came from for you guys?
A complete compliment. Yes, we love bubblegum. Well, you see, there was that, and then we would have been fans of Slade, and John in particular was a fan of T-Rex. So there was that as well. Even though it was a couple of years after that, we still listened to the records, and whenever we decided to do cover versions, John came up with the idea of doing Gary Glitter cover versions and T-Rex cover versions, Slade as well. So there was that, but we weren't kind of, ignoring all the other punk stuff as well. Like we absolutely loved the Sex Pistols. It was an event whenever God Save the Queen came out. We all went to a friend who had bought the single. He had it almost as soon as it came out, and we all went around to his house, and it was like those things you hear about in 1967 whenever there were parties to listen to Sgt. Pepper. We were all there, and we were there just to listen to this single, God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols, which was absolutely fantastic and still is. Still a great record, timely and funny and cutting, and also just it has a great beat, as they say. So there was all that happening as well. And we loved records that now you wouldn't say you loved. We used to do a cover version of a band called Skrewdriver. I don't know if you ever came across Skrewdriver. They turned out to be a really right-wing band.
Yeah.
But their first single was in Chiswick, And they had a song on the B-side called Better Off Crazy. And it was just like a Gloria rip-off, you know? And it was one of the songs, one of the many songs we learned just to play in the Casbah. We played it maybe about half a dozen times. So because there were so few records being made, you sucked them all in, you know? You just thought they were great, even though, you know, they weren't great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. I never would have thought of Skrewdriver as being a band that the Undertones would have covered. And I know the kind of record collecting rules, everyone knows they're this like horrible band for the majority of the career, but the first record you're allowed to buy because they were just a punk band. Those are the rules. I mean, that's how it goes.
I wasn't aware of that rule, but I'm glad we fell on the right side of it.
Kind of like Michael Jackson records at this point. It's like up to Off the Wall, I think we're okay.
And then after that, the cool kids don't listen to it. Yeah.
I would love to hear just more, because I'm very into that genre and that era. I'd love to hear more like bands that you liked at that time, or in particular, if there's anything that your opinion of has changed, either for the better or for the worse, as you got some distance from the era.
Well, we see it was all from records that John got by post, by mail order from the back pages of the NME. That's really where we got the more obscure ones, and or either that or we borrowed them from a friend, Donald McDermott, who was the guy that had the Sex Pistols single. So what else we would have, the Cortinas. We liked the Cortinas. Did we play Television Families? We certainly learnt it, and we did that. And Johnny Moped, we did Incendiary Device. You know, which again, I love Johnny Moped, but you know, the song "Stick It in Her Lug Hole, Watch It Blow Her Head Apart." Maybe looking back. But it's a great riff. We learned that. What else? Eddie and the Hot Rods. We learned Teenage Depression from that, and also we learned the kind of the technique of getting an old 60s song and speeding it up, the way they did in the Live at the Marquee EP.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, we actually, I think we tried to learn their version of 96 Tears, and that was the first version of 96 Tears I certainly had heard, and I think the rest of the band as well. Too many teardrops for one heart to be crying. We weren't really aware of question marks back, you know, before our time, and just eventually you learn about it. But whenever the Live at the Marquee came out, that was a huge event for us. And then after that, we did a speeded up version of "I Can't Explain" by The Who. "I Want to Be Your Man," the Beatles stroke Rolling Stones. The Saints, we got the first Saints single, "I'm Stranded." So that would have been one of the songs we did. And then, of course, we just sort of went through nuggets. We got we borrowed it from the same guy, Donald McDermott, and we did "Dirty Water," we did "Gonna Miss Me," we tried "Nighttime." Did we ever actually play "Nighttime"? We tried it, and we played that. "Let's Talk About Girls," we did that too. So, you know, whatever records we were listening to, we were kind of learning the songs, and we were playing them in the Casbah. This was just about the same time as John was starting to write some songs. So we had that mixture, I suppose, like most bands have. You have that mixture of your cover versions with your original songs, which are kind of inspired by the cover versions. Yeah.
You know, in my opinion, bands, I think nowadays shy away from covers. Like, they really want to do all originals. And if you watch 5 bands in a row that maybe you don't know, you're going to hear like 50 songs that you've never heard before. And I feel like the cover can kind of just give you like a little entryway into like, just so that you already know and can enjoy, and just help you kind of enjoy the band more. I think it's a good move.
Yeah. Well, I remember that whenever in 1979 came along, we had become, you know, we become a proper band with a recording contract and so on. And it influenced other bands in Derry. You know, they followed in our after us. And I remember Damien and I went to see this little sort of showcase thing. It was in an art gallery, and a lot of young bands were playing there. And I remember saying to Damien, none of them are doing cover versions. They've gone completely opposite from what bands used to do. But as you say, they were all doing their own songs, and with all due respect, they weren't great. And I remember thinking, I am really bored. Can't please somebody do a Ramones song or a Sex Pistols song? And in fact, after that, Damien and I then started this side project we called it the Wesleys, and we would do cover versions a couple of times in shows around there. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Bands kind of almost think, oh no, we're only doing our own songs, which is okay, but you gotta lighten up a little.
Yeah, but then again, it's tough because if you are covering like Nuggets, I mean, that's some of the best stuff. And then if you play your own, the Undertones fortunately have strong enough songs that it's no problem. But a lot of bands, you don't want to come away and be like, oh, that cover was great at the end. So you run the risk sometimes. But
we also had a great setup because maybe it was just my sister, but we used to play New York Dolls songs. And I remember we played, I think it was Trash, and my sister says, that's a great song. Says, that's who wrote that? Thinking it was one of our own songs. I had to kind of let her down gently, saying, well, New York Dolls song, but yeah, thank you very much. Although we could have bluffed it, I think we could have lied,
Yeah, there's that move too. That's good. I've done that to a band. I've definitely gone up to a band and complimented my favorite song, which was the only one that they didn't write. It's embarrassing, but
yeah,
that's okay. So it goes. I was rereading your book, which is a wonderful book, your teenage kids book. I got about 3/4. I already read it and really enjoyed it, but just recently I didn't quite finish it. I lived in Japan from about 2004 to 2011. I'm almost positive at some point you have been over there, and I just wanted to hope that that's correct and then ask you a bit about it.
Yeah, I think it was 2010. I'm not sure, but we were there for 4 days, from Thursday till Monday. Maybe that's 5 days. It was one of those unusual requests, and we had never been there before, haven't been there since. But it was, as people always say, it was absolutely brilliant. Really was great.
Good. I'm happy to hear that you had a positive experience in Japan. Yeah. I take a improperly personal pride in people liking Japan. If it's not...
do any bands not have a good experience in Japan, I wonder? I don't think so.
Good. Yeah, it'd be hard to. I don't know. I couldn't imagine. Do you remember... I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot. Did you probably played with some Japanese bands? Would you happen to remember any of them?
You know what? I don't think we did. I don't remember any of the bands. If we did, it might have been because but the two shows were in Tokyo and they were in small clubs, and I think what it was I was making as much as I could, or making the most of being in Tokyo, as in being in Tokyo. You know what I mean? I wasn't hanging around the venue too much, so I may have skipped any support band. Which is a terrible thing to admit, but I do that sometimes because sometimes I think after you've seen a band, you kind of, that was my experience now of rock and roll for the night, and I don't want any more, except that you're supposed to be playing, So no, I didn't see any bands at all.
I toured in a band a bit in the 90s, and I would sort of, out of a sense of obligation, watch like every opening band every night. I was a poor use of my time. You shouldn't feel bad about not making yourself do that.
Yeah.
Is there any? So what else? If you mind talking a little more, like what else you were doing or that you did in
Japan?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we were. I can't remember the name of the guy. It was a guy who ran a record shop. I think it was called Vinyl, and he was the fellow that brought us over. So we were taken to places, which was great. We were taken to restaurants and so on. But the best day I had was after the rest of the band had gone. I think they'd gone on the Sunday. Damien had a friend in Japan, Billy Hassett, who used to be in a band called The Chords. He lived in Japan, so Damien went to him. But
cool.
Myself and my wife Elaine, we had a kind of a day off in Tokyo, and it was great. We went to Kabuki,
I've never done that.
It was just brilliant. It was like pantomime is what they have here, And we just got the cheap ticket and just stood at the back and just enjoyed it. Obviously didn't understand a word of it. we watched this big long performance. We left after an hour, and then we went to the fish market, which, you know, you did all the things that you were supposed to kind of cram in. So I just thought it was fantastic, and always hoping to go back to it for a, you know, proper kind of holiday. It'll be a while, but you know, definitely someday we're going to go back. So I just loved Japan. It's that kind of, it's the cliches, you know, the politeness of the people, was there a place? And you're not in Tokyo, are you? Oh, you are in Tokyo, I think, are you, Eric?
I'm back in Chicago.
There's a place called Piss Alley, which was like which is fantastic, all these little restaurants. So just things like that, you know, you just think, yeah, it's such a cliche, but it is a fantastic place. It really is a fantastic place.
Yeah. No, I agree. My wife and I make a point to go every spring, and obviously this spring didn't work out. But, you know, next spring we'll get back there, so it'll be good.
Everything is next year. Everything's next year.
Michael, I'd like to ask you a bit about the BBC. I mean, you have a fantastic radio show on there right now. I really enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
You know, it's a great mix of old and new, and mostly things that I've not heard of, but immediately write down and go search for. But also, you know, in reading your book, you know, you talk about how much attention you paid to Top of the Pops, you know, obviously the John Peel's show, and, you know, ultimately John Peel playing the first Undertones record and then being involved in helping you get a record deal. And kind of the question is, I guess, considering it was such an important part in your cultural education, played a part in the band's success, and you know, now it's come full circle with you having a show on the BBC. I just wondered if you could talk a bit about the BBC's influence on culture, youth culture, in the past, and what influence you see it having now in an age where everything is accessible via the internet. Well,
I grew up with it. You know, I grew up with my parents listening to. Well, we watched it on TV because at that stage there weren't that many channels, so we watched the things. We watched the Top of the Pops. We watched children's TV, and so on. Radio, as a teenager, you listen to Radio 1, and of course you listen to Radio 1 and you get annoyed with it, you know, because the daytime DJs, they were a bit cheesy, but that's where you heard, that's the only place really where you heard records, new music. And the Peel thing came in when you were maybe 16, 17. For me anyway, that's when you were listening to, that was nighttime, so that was, you know, very different to what was played during the day, and you heard all that great records and all those great records, and the timing was right because we started listening to it just about 76, maybe 75, 76, 77, so the timing was perfect to start listening to John Peel. But that was all on the one station, you know, so on BBC Radio, or Radio 1, the BBC radio station Radio 1, that was the thing that you listened to for music, whether it was music that you didn't like, whether it was music that was just, you knew was just going to be number one in the charts for the next month, as well as the really specialised stuff that you probably only heard once and would never hear again. So that was just a huge influence, you know, in terms of what I was listening to, and I think in terms of what the rest of the band was listening to. Now, yeah, it's like now it's all here on the computer, but at the same time, there's still a sense of Radio 1 now. They do promote up and coming acts, up and coming artists, and so on. Whether they need to, in terms of whether people can sort of quote make it without Radio 1, they probably can. But it's still healthy, I think, that there is a station that, you know, is constantly reinventing itself, that, you know, gets rid of people once they're over 25, it sounds like, or 30. And, you know, some people say, why are they doing that? And I think that's the only way to do it. You really do have to be ruthless, because they went through a bad phase in the 80s whenever they had these DJs on who were just far too old, and, you know, and were picking up and stuff far too late. Now I get the sense that they just have a constant through flow of, you know, eager 20-year-olds, and that's the ideal way. That's the absolutely the only way to run a radio station like that. So it's been many years since I listened to it, but you're aware of it just from reading about it and just from knowing that, yeah, they are it is still important,
Yeah, I think it's incredible that it's normal for people into music in America to know who John Peel is, despite the fact that you could never listen to him. I mean, that's a wide-reaching influence, yeah.
Yeah, and that can never be repeated, though. I don't think he can ever be repeated because of the technology. Having said all that about Radio 1 now, they're still good at developing and introducing new bands, but with him, it was literally the only place you could hear it. You didn't have the option of going on to Bandcamp or anything like that. It was the John Peel Show, or it was nothing else, or it was just reading about it and buying the records and then hearing them. So he does hold a definite special place, which can't be replicated at all.
I can relate to that. I mean, even I don't know if you would have heard of this or not. There's a punk magazine in America called Maximum Rock and Roll.
Right.
So, I do know. Okay. There was one columnist in there, Reverend Norb, and he would so for me to even know that I should know the band name Undertones and go try and listen to it, that's how I found out about that, is he would just keep repeating, like, Buzzcocks, Undertones, Rosillos. Yeah, it was great. So, but even at that, I mean, I ended up going over to a guy's house and, like, dubbing the record because I can't just drop $20 on every CD I want to hear. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's fun.
The best thing, can I just say something? The best thing, the best music critic related story that I have is that my sister, who lives in Detroit, she lives just outside Detroit, and about 10 years ago, she sent me a piece in one of the newspapers. It was about Lester Bangs, the late great Lester Bangs. I'm sure you've heard of him. And there was a photograph taken of Lester Bangs at home, listening to records. It was taken about maybe 79, and on the wall was a poster of the Undertones. And we lived off that. I'd show the rest of the band that, and we were like, whoa. That was just the best thing ever. Absolutely the best thing ever. So yeah, all it takes is one person like that if they like you, it's like, oh, you just walk a little lighter,
Yeah, it's really cool to hear that
I lost the audience there.
No, I loved it. It's great that you like got to have an appreciation for that, and it meant something to you. That's really cool.
I have one trivia question, just a burning question of mine is what is a jump boy?
I have no idea. I have no idea. John wrote it, and it's nothing really, and it's, to be honest, it's still kind of, the title kind of makes me go, not sure about that, but the chords are great. No, there's no secret to that one at all. There's no secret, and I think it's a, as they would say, it's a juxtaposition of two words. That's kind of it,
Masterclass songwriting, right there.
What is it? What is a tangerine dream? Nothing really. It's tangerine and it's dream.
One of the things that was mentioned in the book that I found shocking was the first time that you guys sat down to record. That's probably not right. You probably didn't sit down, but.
No, we did. We did sit down a lot.
Was that after the first recording session, you guys realized it was the first time you could actually hear the vocals, and your reaction was to be disappointed?
Yeah, that was myself and Billy. The first time we did a demo tape, and that was about February 1978. And we had been playing. Fergal had been in the band good 18 months, and. If not longer, over 2 years, and we heard the singing, and Billy and I were sitting outside, and it's one of those things that we were kind of afraid to say it, but it was just myself and Billy, the drummer, and I think Billy says, I'm not sure about the singing. I says, I don't like it. And what can I say? It was a genuine thought, and even then, yeah, I would still say I'm not a huge fan of Fergal singing. No? Which is, why didn't I say something before? Because no one asked me, You asked me, Jason.
Teenage dreams so hard to beat. Every time she walks down the street, another girl in the neighborhood. When she was mad, she looked so good.
No, that's yeah. What can I say? I'll be honest.
I think you just lost the audience.
Please don't tell anybody.
It's very funny. So when I was probably 18, 19, and I said I had that dubbed tape of the first Undertones record, I was just in my car constantly, and my friend just got super mad and was like, "You only like this because the singer has that vibrato." And I was like, no, it's not it is extremely distinct, but I like the whole thing. So
very distinct, of course, and then he had huge hits on his own, huge success on his own. But yeah, well spotted, Jason.
I have a very silly one. I'm curious if you. So I read Terry Hooley's book, and then there's also that movie that's like a kind of adaptation called Good Vibrations. Did you watch that by any chance?
I tried to avoid watching it because I knew that it wouldn't be accurate, and I know it can't be accurate because it's only a film, and if it was going to be accurate, it would be 3 hours long and very boring. So I kind of just nodded and waved and says, "Great, this is great," but I didn't actually sit and watch it until I got the DVD from which I bought from Terry from his shop. So I thought it was great. It was a great event. It was absolutely a great event, and it was great because the fellow that played Terry was fantastic. And I was so happy for Terry.
I will basically tear up at the part in the movie, which I realize is not accurate exactly to real life, when John Peel just drops the needle back and just plays Teenage Kicks again. Yeah. Gets me every time. It's so good. I would like to,
That is good, but you know what? I love that film, that thing you do. And you know the bit when the radio station first plays the record and they're running down the street, they run into the shop? I get that every time. I think this is absolutely one of the best things ever in the cinema. So yeah, I can completely agree with you in that.
That's funny that you like it about a different fictional band, but not your real life band. That's funny. It's good.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I can watch it whenever I know that it's another band, but I can't watch it whenever I know it's supposed to be us.
I can. I mean, that makes sense. I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My last kind of this is a pretty absurd question, but since you've been kind enough to grant us your time, I'm going to throw it out there. This is only
no such thing.
Oh, there is. There's only like one paragraph in your book where you mentioned that you met Bono, and you were talking about fame, and he just very openly says, like, I want it. I want that very much. And I thought it was just it kind of gave me pause for reflection, because on the one hand, this is getting less of a question, but on the one hand, I think it's very cool that the Undertones just did what you did, and whatever happened, happened. But it also gave me pause for thought to say, like, maybe there's something to be said for picking like a really ambitious goal and stating it and just putting it out there. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, on my take on that.
Oh, absolutely. At the time, we wouldn't have. We had done some interviews. I think that's where he had read this. We had done some interviews because Teenage Kicks had been out and all that, and we were kind of the way we were, and I think that was a bit unusual at the time. And yeah, whenever he said that, Fergal and I both kind of looked at him, kind of going, right, okay. We didn't quite move away slowly, but we were a bit taken aback by the honesty of it, And then that's why band, like the Beatles were the same. They really, really wanted to be famous. They were very ambitious. And, who's to say? And obviously that was a good thing. When you think of the huge business that U2 became, they completely changed not just the Irish music industry, they changed Ireland. That ambition led to so much success that they changed their own country. So, you can't knock that. And you know, I'm a fan of some of the records, not a fan of all of the records, but you can't dispute that what they did, and they were also really, really cool. Even though when they weren't being cool, they were still being cool. You know, so what they did was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, looking back on that, I thought I would write it because it was genuine. It did, you know, it was true. And also it kind of does show a wee bit of what early U2 were like, and also what early Undertones were like, you know. Yeah,
I don't want to just spend the whole interview telling you how much I like the band and the book, but it's great. It's so detailed, and it's just so like a deep dive into that era. So it's really fun to get to read, because the record on its own is more than enough, but I would never get that kind of additional insight without the book. So it's really cool.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
What can I do? You know you drive me crazy when I'm looking at you. The summer's really here and it's time to come out. Time to discover what fun is about. Here comes the summer. Here comes the summer.
Speaking of Ireland, there's nothing about the Undertones that would have made me think this band is from Derry during the Troubles. And not to suggest that every band around the world needs to reflect the socio-political makeup of their surroundings, but I am curious if it was A, because it just never even occurred to you to write songs about what was going on around you, B, by just an active decision to not get into that, or C, other.
Possibly a bit of A, and possibly a bit of B, and possibly a bit of C as well. Now, bear in mind, John wrote most of the songs, vast majority of the songs. I wrote some of the songs, but we were of the same kind of opinion at the time. And you're talking like 1978, probably 79 too. That I can't. Was it just me says this, or did we agree that if you were going to write a song about it, you would need to be really, really good. You know, you would need to write like basically Blowing in the Wind or Hard Rain's Gonna Fall to do it justice that we would be happy with it. Now that was kind of that was to write a song about the conflict. So that was one part of it. But the other part as well is that we were inspired by bands like the Ramones and the Beatles, Slade. So we were inspired. We were trying to write songs like our musical heroes, which they didn't write songs about the Troubles. So there's no way we would end up doing it purely by copying somebody. And then, but that changed though by about 1980, whenever we were, I suppose, more confident. And John was more confident then about writing songs which were a bit, at a tangent really. About to what was happening. There were some songs which kind of they didn't directly address anything. So he would have done songs like that later on. I suppose, especially with Fat Petra Emotion, they were quite political, So it was that kind of combination. And even whenever Damien O'Neill, who I would have written songs with, as I think you've probably read before, whenever Damien wanted to write a song about the hunger strikes, which were happening in Derry in 1980, or in Northern Ireland in 1980, a wee bit of me kind of remembered that thing about, if you were going to write about the Troubles, you'd need to be really, really good to write about the Troubles, because we didn't like stiff little fingers efforts at all. We thought they were a bit meh. So even whenever Damien sort of specifically asked me to do it, I kind of had to say, no, I can't do it, but I'll do a song about something quite obscure and not really telling anything, but which kind of rhymes. So yeah, that was my personal experience of it, is that we wouldn't have been good enough to deal with the complexities, because it is complex. It's not like the fighting the Germans. It wasn't the Second World War.
Right.
It was a nuanced conflict,
You previously mentioned, I meant to follow up on this, that you two changed Ireland, and I kind of nodded, but I actually don't know what you meant. How? What did they...
The confidence that the country had, it was the first time that a rock and roll band it was the first time that the biggest rock and roll band in the world came from Ireland. Financially made a huge difference as well. I remember reading something in the early 1980s that the tax department in the Republic, the revenue commissioners they were called, they had a separate section only dealing with U2. Now, I know since then there's been they've moved to the Netherlands thing, but it was that kind of thing, and I think it affected people slightly younger than me, but just that whole thing about being Irish. Being Irish wasn't just about, the shamrock and all that anymore. Being Irish was like U2, So
I'd like to...
It definitely did. It gave the country a huge confidence boost.
I just wanted to apologize for America's version of Irish things. It was terrible. I don't know what we're doing.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Not at all.
I was just picturing Bono with a "Kiss Me, I'm Irish" shirt on.
Yeah. It's early yet.
Speaking of famous Irish rock bands, there's also a great anecdote in your book about a show that you famously turned down.
Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you hate Thin Lizzy?
Not hate. We were never fans. I thought it was a bit, all that very machismo. All that. Anyone there with a bit of Irish? Anyone out there? Would you like some more? All that kind of really. I thought it was really sexist crap, and also that kind of hard rock type thing, leather trousers. I just didn't like that at all. Now, that doesn't matter that I didn't like Thin Lizzy, until it came that we had just gone over to London. I think it was just after we'd done Teenage Kicks or something. We'd done Top of the Pops, and we were told by someone that Thin Lizzy are saying that you're going to be supporting them at the Hammersmith Odeon, which is a big venue, and immediately it was Thin Lizzy, so we kind of would have said no, but also a bit of us went, that's a bit presumptuous, so that's my memory of it. Now, someone told me since that apparently we had already told them no, or somebody had already told them no, but I just never got Thin Lizzy at all, never got them. Some of the Phil Lynott songs later, I like, Old Town's good, Sarah's good, but all that kind of, tonight there's going to be a jailbreak somewhere in this town. As somebody, one of my friends says, you would think that the jailbreak would be where the jail is. But anyway, I just thought that it was a bit kind of, didn't like Thin Lizzy. And in fact, then I did a terrible thing. I was actually in New York. I did a terrible thing because we were playing in New York, 1980 maybe it was, and we did a show, and afterwards I was out front. I was talking to some people, and I was aware that standing beside me was a very tall Irishman, and it was Phil Lynott, and he was sort of there to say hello, and I couldn't say hello to him because I did a terrible thing. I says, I'm sorry. I says, I really don't like Thin Lizzy. I'm sorry. And I went away, left him there.
Oh my.
I know, that was a terrible thing to do. And he died.
He
died 6 years later. Oh. You never get the chance to say sorry. But anyway,
of heartbreak.
Must be. But no, the things you do, the things you do because you think you are principled, but really what it is just you're rude.
Yeah, I feel bad about mocking Iron Maiden after seeing them coming out of a bar in Chicago one time.
It's not too late to make amends.
Pretending I was confusing them for Winger.
No. Anyway, we all done bad things.
You're right. It isn't too late. I will write them a letter.
Yes.
I really appreciate your time. I don't want to take up too much more of it, so I kind of wanted to wrap up with just kind of the present tense. I'm curious. Undertones normally tour, but maybe not exactly right now. Yeah. But just, I know you do your radio show. In general, I just like to hear what you're up to these days.
Well, the radio show is like an add-on to my day job. My day job is a radio producer in Foyle, BBC Radio Ulster. So I produce some kind of speech programs. I produce other people's, music shows. I produce whatever needs producing. As I say, the radio show is like as an add-on. So that kind of takes up my time. And yeah, we do play. We do short bursts of dates. And it's settled down now, because we've been doing it since we reformed with Paul, with new singer. We didn't ask Virgil. We've been doing that now 20 years, which is bizarre when you think about it. But I think that's just the way the entertainment industry operates now. It's people do things, and it's just one little part of their lives, and that's what we do. We get together for some shows, and then we say cheerio, and then we get together again another couple of months. So that's kind of my life's great. I am working. I can cycle to work. I am working for a very good employer. I have a very happy home life, and every so often people in America Skype me and say, explain about this, explain about that. So I still appreciate that, But whenever Teenage Kicks come out, it's such a cliche, I know, but it is true. If you had said to the 19-year-old me that whenever you're 60, you'll still be talking about this record, you would have thought, no, that's just doesn't make sense. But now it kind of does. I can appreciate it. I'm still fascinated. I love the Jam, and I love the Beatles, and I would read everything about the Beatles, and I would read everything about the Jam. I just love what was going on in their lives whenever they were making, sound effects and so on. I just love, I love the minutiae of bands, so I can appreciate it completely.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a fun thrill that I like when I run into people who are, a good deal older than me, maybe 15, 20 years, and they're still like the excitement and enthusiasm that they get about discovering a new record or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, oh, that will still be there for me. Like, I will always have that as a great source of joy. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's what I like about doing the radio show, because I have to go on Bandcamp, and I have to, luckily people send me stuff, but you go and you seek out records and you just think, oh, this is great, and you still get that feeling when you hear a great record. You go, whoa, I like that, even though like if you sat down and kind of rationalised it, you would say, well, it's a bit derivative, it's a bit like that, but that doesn't make it. It doesn't. That comes later. It's the thump that you get from a great record.
It's so funny how whenever I usually a song that I really love, it's better to not think about it. But if I think about it, I'll be like 9 times out of 10, the chorus is that 1-4-5. That's. But don't think about it. Just enjoy it. Let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. 3-chord trick. Everything's derived from something else, but it's still great.
Yeah. All right. I don't think we can wrap up better than that. I'm happy. I really want to thank you for your time. I very much enjoyed talking to you.
You're very welcome.
Very generous.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Wait. One quick question. Where do people find all of your goings on?
Oh, there's probably a website somewhere which is probably very badly maintained. So Undertones, I don't know, to be honest. I actually, sounds terrible. I have signed up to the Undertones news because because it means that I know where we're playing, because I could just check whenever an email comes in, oh, that show's definitely confirmed, oh, that's good. So there's an Undertones.com, there's Facebook and so on, But as I say, it's not a slick kind of PR machine there. So you will know. It's on a need-to-know basis, Jason. It's on a need-to-know basis.
Fair enough.
Mind your own business.
Great.